Early morning, federal agents descended on Zak Bagans' Las Vegas mansion. Black SUVs, armed FBI, search warrants. This wasn't about ghosts, this was criminal. What they found inside wasn't just disturbing, it was illegal. Human remains without permits, stolen artifacts from war zones, items matching missing persons cases, evidence from unsolved murders, sacred objects taken from native graves, a trafficking network spanning continents. Zak built his empire on cursed objects. Turns out they were cursed because they were stolen. From crime scenes, from burial sites, from victims' families. Subscribe now because what the FBI discovered changes everything. The Haunted Museum is closed. Ghost Adventures is canceled. Criminal charges are coming, and the ghost hunter is about to face decades in prison. This is what federal agents found inside Zak Bagans' mansion, and why his career is over. At 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, multiple black SUVs pulled up to Zak Bagans' luxury mansion in an exclusive Las Vegas gated community. At least 15 armed FBI agents in tactical gear exited the vehicles and approached the property. Neighbors waking up for work witnessed the commotion. Federal agents blocked off the street. Within minutes, local news helicopters arrived overhead capturing aerial footage. This wasn't a wellness check or routine visit. This was a full-scale federal raid on one of paranormal television's biggest stars. Zak's mansion sits in a gated community where properties are worth $3 million or more. His neighbors include celebrities and wealthy business people who value privacy and security. The sight of armed federal agents was shocking and unprecedented for the quiet neighborhood. Multiple neighbors recorded video on their phones showing agents entering and exiting the property, repeatedly carrying boxes and evidence bags. The raid wasn't quick. Federal agents remained on scene for over 8 hours, methodically searching every room. Zak was home when agents arrived and was cooperative according to initial reports, though witnesses described him as visibly shaken and distressed. This wasn't his public haunted museum location. This was his private residence where he kept his personal collection away from tourists and cameras. The items inside this mansion were things Zak didn't want the public to see. The search warrant was federal, not local police, indicating serious crimes under federal jurisdiction. It had been signed by a federal judge based on months of investigation. The warrant specifically listed items for seizure related to artifact trafficking and potential international crimes. This meant the FBI had been building a case against Zak for a substantial period before executing the raid. Media response was immediate and overwhelming. Local Las Vegas news broke the story first with live coverage. Within hours, national outlets picked it up. TMZ posted aerial footage from helicopters. The paranormal community erupted on social media with shock and disbelief. Ghost Adventures fans were divided between those claiming it was a setup and those saying they always knew something was wrong. FBI raids Zak Bagans trended on Twitter immediately. Official statements were minimal. The FBI confirmed the raid but stated, "This is an ongoing investigation and we cannot comment further at this time." Zak's lawyer released a brief statement saying his client was cooperating fully with authorities. Travel Channel acknowledged they were aware of the situation. No arrests were made that day, but the investigation was clearly far from over. 6 months before the raid, a former Haunted Museum employee made contact with the FBI with disturbing allegations about Zak Bagans' collection practices. This wasn't a disgruntled worker making vague accusations. The whistleblower provided detailed documentation including photographs of specific artifacts, records of suspicious financial transactions, shipping manifests, and names of international contacts who supplied Zak with items. The FBI's Art Crime Team, the same unit that handles stolen antiquities and cultural heritage crimes, took the allegations seriously and opened an investigation immediately. The whistleblower alleged that Zak had been acquiring artifacts through illegal means for years. Some items were stolen directly from crime scenes and police evidence rooms. Objects were taken from protected indigenous burial sites in violation of federal law. There were possible human remains being kept without proper permits or documentation. Provenance documents for expensive pieces appeared to be forged. The whistleblower also alleged money laundering through artifact sales and participation in an international trafficking network that moved stolen cultural property across borders. The FBI began extensive surveillance of Zak's properties, including the mansion and Haunted Museum. They tracked shipments and deliveries, monitored financial transactions through multiple bank accounts, and contacted international law enforcement agencies in countries where Zak's suppliers operated. For 6 months, federal agents built their case methodically, gathering evidence and establishing patterns of illegal activity. The investigation revealed connections to several ongoing cases. Multiple missing persons cases had items that matched descriptions of objects in Zak's possession. Stolen property reports from estate thefts aligned with pieces he'd acquired. Archaeological sites that had been illegally looted showed items matching his collection. Indigenous tribes had reported sacred objects missing that appeared in his inventory. While Zak wasn't initially suspected of direct involvement in these crimes, the people supplying him were primary suspects, and he was knowingly purchasing stolen goods. The international scope was staggering. Artifacts were being imported from Egypt, Iraq, Cambodia, Mexico, and Peru. Many came from war zones and conflict areas where cultural heritage was being systematically looted. Items were protected under international law and UNESCO conventions. Customs documents had been falsified to get items into the United States. Shell companies were used for shipping to obscure the real buyers and sellers. The breaking point came when FBI agents intercepted a suspicious shipment at customs. When they opened the crate, the contents matched exactly what the whistleblower had described. The items were clearly stolen and illegal to import. The shipment traced directly back to Zak's purchasing network. That's when the search warrant was approved and the raid was carefully planned to execute. When FBI agents entered Zak Bagans' mansion, they discovered a hidden room behind a bookshelf. This climate-controlled space was locked, and only Zak had the key. Federal agents had to breach the door. Inside was Zak's private collection, items he never displayed publicly at the haunted museum. This is where the most disturbing discoveries were made. Multiple human skulls and bones were found without any permits or documentation. Federal law requires specific permits for possessing human remains. Some appeared ancient and possibly archaeological. Others were more recent, which was deeply concerning. Several matched descriptions from missing persons cases. The lack of documentation meant potential grave robbery charges and illegal possession. Indigenous sacred objects filled one section. Native American ceremonial items protected under NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. These objects were illegal to possess without explicit tribal permission. Items had clearly been stolen from burial sites. Sacred objects never meant for display or sale were treated like trophies. The FBI immediately contacted tribal authorities. International antiquities without proper documentation included Egyptian artifacts lacking export papers, Iraqi pieces likely looted during the war, Cambodian temple fragments, and Mexican pre-Columbian artifacts. All were protected by international treaties. Importation without documentation is federal crime. Customs forms had been deliberately falsified. The murder memorabilia collection was extremely disturbing. Personal effects allegedly from famous serial killer victims, letters from convicted killers, items that appeared stolen from police evidence rooms. Some matched property reported missing from law enforcement facilities. Agents also seized boxes of documents, including forged provenance certificates, financial records showing suspicious payments to international dealers, communications discussing avoiding detection, shell company paperwork, encrypted hard drives, and offshore account information suggesting money laundering. FBI agents who participated in the raid privately stated this was among the worst private collections they'd ever encountered. Some items shouldn't exist outside of evidence rooms. Multiple federal laws had clearly been violated. The international implications were significant. This wasn't just about artifacts. This was about possible connections to serious crimes, including murder. Among everything seized, several items stood out as particularly horrifying. The first was a human skull that appeared recent rather than ancient. FBI ordered immediate DNA testing. Within days, the results came back with a match in the missing persons database. The skull belonged to a woman who disappeared in the 1990s. Her case had gone cold decades ago. Her family never knew what happened to her. Now a homicide investigation was reopened. Zak claimed he purchased it in 2015 for $50,000 from a collector who said it was an authenticated ancient indigenous skull. It wasn't. It was a murder victim. Several personal effects matched descriptions from other missing persons cases. Jewelry, clothing items, and personal belongings that should have been with victims were instead in Zak's collection. Law enforcement was now contacting families of missing persons, potentially providing closure in cold cases while raising horrifying questions about whether victims were killed specifically for their possessions. A sacred Native American medicine bundle was identified as an item stolen from a Plains tribe reservation decades ago. The tribe had been searching for this extremely sacred object for years. These bundles are never meant for sale or display. When FBI contacted tribal authorities about recovering it, there was an emotional response. This single item alone carries serious federal charges under NAGPRA. Iraqi artifacts matched UNESCO's red list of stolen cultural property. Items reported missing from museums during the Iraq war chaos were sitting in Zak's private room. The Iraqi government is now demanding their return. Zak paid hundreds of thousands for pieces that belong to humanity's shared cultural heritage. Objects allegedly from the Manson family murders were found, including personal effects of victims that should never have left police evidence. The families of Tate LaBianca murder victims never knew these items were missing. Questions emerged about how Zak obtained evidence from one of America's most famous murder cases. Encrypted computer files seized by FBI are being analyzed by their cybercrime unit. The files contain communications with international dealers, financial transactions conducted through cryptocurrency, and names of other collectors in the network. This evidence could lead to dozens of additional arrests across multiple countries. The investigation is expanding far beyond Zak Bagans alone. The day after raiding Zak's mansion, FBI agents arrived at the haunted museum with a second search warrant. The popular Las Vegas tourist attraction was immediately closed to the public. Staff members were questioned extensively, while federal agents documented every artifact on display. The museum's inventory was compared against import records, purchase documentation, and reports of stolen property. What agents found was deeply troubling. Many displayed items lacked proper documentation proving legal acquisition. Several pieces matched stolen property reports from various jurisdictions. International artifacts had no import paperwork as required by law. Human remains were being displayed without the permits required by federal and state regulations. Multiple items were seized immediately as evidence. The museum cannot reopen until the investigation concludes and all illegal items are removed. The disturbing realization was that tourists had been paying $35 to view stolen property and evidence from unsolved crimes. Items marketed as the world's most haunted objects were actually stolen from graves, looted from archaeological sites, and taken from crime scenes. The entire business model was built on trafficking in illegal antiquities. Visitors unknowingly supported an international smuggling operation. Class action lawsuits from ticket buyers are now being filed claiming fraud and misrepresentation. Most museum staff had no knowledge of illegal activities. Employees believed everything was legitimate and properly acquired. Zak handled all acquisitions personally with only a small inner circle aware of the truth. Several staff members are now cooperating with investigators and have been offered immunity deals in exchange for testimony. The financial investigation expanded to examine museum revenue and where money actually went. Offshore accounts were discovered. The IRS joined the investigation examining possible tax evasion and money laundering. Museum income may have been used to fund additional illegal purchases and to pay smugglers and dealers. The closure devastated Las Vegas tourism in that area. Thousands of pre-purchased tickets needed refunds. The city tourism board expressed concern. Other attractions distanced themselves from anything connected to Zak Bagans. His name became toxic overnight. Even if legal items remain, the museum's reputation is destroyed. The collection is permanently tainted. Whether it ever reopens is questionable. Who wants to visit a museum built on stolen human remains and murder victim property? FBI investigation revealed Zak wasn't working alone, but was part of a sophisticated international trafficking network spanning multiple countries. Dealers in Egypt, Iraq, Cambodia, Mexico, and Peru supplied him with illegal artifacts for years. This wasn't amateur smuggling. It was a coordinated operation involving experienced criminals who knew how to move stolen cultural property across borders while avoiding detection. One key figure the FBI identified was an Egyptian dealer known as the Collector, who systematically looted archaeological sites and sold directly to wealthy American buyers. Zak was a regular customer. Interpol has been monitoring this dealer for years, and an arrest is imminent. Similarly, an Iraqi dealer operating since 2003 exploited war chaos to smuggle priceless artifacts from looted museums and temples. Zak purchased extensively from this source, fully aware the items were stolen war loot. Criminal networks on Native American reservations illegally excavated burial sites and sold sacred objects to collectors. Zak paid premium prices, which directly incentivized more grave robbery. Tribes have been devastated by these ongoing thefts of their ancestors' remains and sacred items. The network operated through sophisticated methods. Items were smuggled in containers with false bottoms. Shipments went to shell companies with addresses that existed only on paper. Paperwork was forged at multiple stages. Customs officials may have been bribed to look the other way, Items were deliberately mislabeled as reproductions on customs forms, then sold to Zak at prices reflecting their true value. Money moved through cryptocurrency to obscure the financial trail. FBI discovered an extensive paper trail documenting years of transactions totaling millions of dollars. Communications between Zak and dealers showed he was fully aware items were illegal. Messages discussed strategies for avoiding detection by authorities. He cannot claim ignorance. The evidence proves criminal intent and knowing participation. Zak wasn't the network's only American buyer. Dozens of other collectors, including possibly other celebrities, purchased from the same dealers. More raids on other collectors are expected. This investigation is expanding internationally. The FBI Art Crime Team is coordinating with law enforcement across multiple continents. Full prosecution of everyone involved could take years, but the network is finally being dismantled. The most disturbing aspect of the FBI investigation involves connections to missing persons cases. One skull seized from Zak's mansion was immediately DNA tested. Results showed a match in the missing persons database. The skull belonged to a woman who disappeared in the 1990s. Her case went cold decades ago with no leads. Her family spent years not knowing what happened. Now, homicide detectives have reopened the case as a murder investigation. Zak purchased the skull in 2015 for $50,000 from a collector who claimed it was an authenticated ancient indigenous artifact. It wasn't ancient. It was a modern murder victim. The seller is now the prime suspect in her murder. FBI is working to identify and locate this dealer who may have killed specifically to obtain items for the collector market. Several other personal effects seized from the mansion match descriptions from missing persons cases. Jewelry, clothing, and personal items that belong to victims are being identified. FBI is contacting families of missing persons, potentially providing closure in cold cases. But this raises horrifying questions. Were some victims murdered specifically for their possessions to be sold as haunted objects? The dark reality of the haunted object market is that demand creates incentive for crimes. Items with tragic histories are worth more money. Murder victims' belongings have value to collectors. Some dealers are willing to kill to obtain inventory. Collectors like Zak, who pay premium prices and ask no questions about origins, fuel this murderous market. The FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit is now profiling dealers in the network. Some may be serial killers using the collector market as cover for their crimes. Selling victims' possessions as haunted memorabilia provides the perfect explanation for having items that should raise suspicion. Zak may have unknowingly purchased from active murderers, or perhaps he knew and simply didn't care as long as the items had dark histories. Families of victims are speaking out publicly. The daughter of the woman whose skull was found said tearfully, "He had my mother's skull in his house, displayed like a trophy. He never asked where it came from." Other families are coming forward after recognizing items from photographs released by FBI. Civil lawsuits for emotional distress and wrongful death are being filed. Even if Zak didn't directly kill anyone, he created the market that incentivized these murders. His money funded criminals and grave robbers. People died or had graves desecrated so Zak could have his collection. Travel Channel's response was swift and decisive. An official statement declared they were taking these allegations with utmost seriousness. Ghost Adventures production was immediately halted. All scheduled episodes were pulled from the air. The network began reviewing all previous content for potential legal liability. Lawyers examined whether contract termination was possible and necessary. The network's reputation was at stake. Cast members quickly distanced themselves from Zak. Aaron Goodwin released a statement saying he was shocked and disturbed and had no knowledge of any illegal activities. Billy Tolley emphasized he was fully cooperating with the investigation. Jay Wasley remained silent, but his lawyer issued a statement. All cast members stressed they simply worked on the television show and knew nothing about Zak's private collection or acquisition methods. They were trying to protect their own careers from the fallout. Nick Groff, who left the show years ago under controversial circumstances, wasn't surprised at all. This is who he always was. Ego and obsession led here. I'm glad I got out when I did. His earlier allegations about Zak's character now seemed vindicated. Dakota Layden called it horrifying but explains a lot, while his sister Chelsea stated, "This is beyond paranormal drama. This is criminal and evil." Fan reactions were intensely divided. Die-hard defenders claimed it was a frame job and FBI corruption, but most fans felt horrified and betrayed. Can't watch Ghost Adventures anymore. Everything feels tainted now. The social media fallout was massive and immediate. Advertisers began pulling out rapidly, demanding refunds and contract cancellations. No company wanted their brand associated with criminal activity and stolen human remains. The financial impact was devastating. Ghost adventures had been profitable for years but became toxic overnight. Streaming platforms faced pressure about whether old episodes should remain available. Some argued removing them erases evidence of what happened. Others said keeping them available is ethically wrong. Travel Channel faced criticism regardless of what decision they made. The archive controversy had no good solution. The consensus among industry insiders, Ghost Adventures is finished. Even if Zak is somehow cleared, which seems impossible given the evidence, the show's reputation is destroyed beyond repair. 20 years of paranormal television ended with an FBI raid. Zak Bagans faces devastating federal charges that could result in decades in prison. Possession of stolen property across state lines carries 5 to 10 years per count. Trafficking in illegal antiquities adds 10 to 20 years. NAGPRA violations for illegally possessing Native American remains and sacred objects carry separate federal charges with mandatory minimum sentences. Customs fraud and false declarations on import documents are additional felonies. Money laundering charges are likely given the offshore accounts and cryptocurrency transactions. Conspiracy to traffic artifacts involves everyone in the network. With multiple counts of each charge, Zak realistically faces 40 to 60 years in federal prison. State charges from Nevada are also possible, including theft, possession of stolen property, fraud, forgery, and illegal possession of human remains. Because state and federal charges involve different jurisdictions, there's no double jeopardy protection. He can be tried and convicted in both systems. International arrest warrants are being prepared. Egypt is requesting extradition. Iraq wants him tried there for stealing cultural heritage. An Interpol red notice is possible, preventing him from leaving the United States. His passport has been seized. After serving any U.S. sentence, he could face international trials. Civil lawsuits are mounting rapidly. Families of missing persons whose remains he possessed are filing wrongful death and emotional distress claims. Native American tribes are suing for violation of sacred trust and NAGPRA violations. Museum ticket buyers filed a class action for fraud and misrepresentation. These civil cases could bankrupt him even if criminal charges somehow don't result in prison time. Financial penalties will be staggering. Millions in fines are expected. The government is pursuing asset forfeiture of his mansion, the haunted museum property, and all artifacts. Bank accounts are frozen. Offshore money is being traced and seized. Even without prison, Zak will be financially destroyed. His legal team's defense strategy claims he didn't know items were illegal and trusted dealers and documentation, positioning him as a victim of fraud. But evidence contradicts this completely. Communications show he knew items were stolen and discussed avoiding detection, claiming ignorance is nearly impossible. The FBI wants the entire trafficking network. They may offer Zak a cooperation deal with reduced charges if he testifies against dealers and names everyone involved. It's possibly his only way to avoid dying in prison. But cooperation requires admitting everything, and his ego may prevent that. Zak remains in Las Vegas under FBI surveillance, staying at an undisclosed location. His mansion is a crime scene. The haunted museum is closed permanently. Ghost Adventures is canceled. He has no income and faces millions in legal fees. Assets are frozen or seized. Friends and industry contacts have abandoned him. He's isolated, depressed, and facing decades in prison. The irony is devastating. He spent 20 years claiming objects were cursed by dark entities. The real curse was his own criminal behavior. The darkness wasn't supernatural. It was his moral failure. Families of victims whose remains he collected finally have justice coming. The ghost hunter will become a ghost himself, locked away where he belongs.